Breaking the gray.
Oh, wow. Sarah. It's great to see you. Oh, and look at, you know what? I'm enjoying now that our podcast tools that we use tell us what's happening on the screen versus us guessing. So I'm happy about that. But also I'm noticing that you're pulling a little bit of an Amy Winehouse on us here with your microphone.
Yes, this is it. I have to compete with you, your loud booming voice, Russ. So I'm kind of compensating.
And the nasal part of it too. I didn't realize how nasally I was until I listened to the podcast, and my wife was like, "Is that really you?" And I'm like, "Yeah." She's like, "Wow, you sound like you're talking out of your nose." And I was like, "I can't help it. It's what God gave me, you know." I'm missing you, Sarah. We saw each other in person about a month ago, and I'm still missing you. So I hope all is well with you.
Yes, it was all too brief, the trip to the States, back to the UK. We've actually got some really brilliant sunshine today, so all good. But don't worry, I'll be back stateside soon. That's
a little heat wave today, right? A little heat wave.
Mini
going on
heat wave.
Yeah.
That's what we have in it. Mini heat wave. It means 2 days for the whole summer, but that's it. We're embracing that.
Global warming for you is 2 days.
Yeah.
The rest of the world, it's every day. Well, I'm excited today. I will admittedly tell you that when I see a guest on our calendar, I try to do some prep work. And I exercised like crazy over the weekend. I was very proud of myself. I was like, I'm gonna get some exercise. I saw Rewire Fitness. I'm like, I'm in it. I'm doing this. And then the last 2 days, I haven't done anything. I've slept poorly. I'm eating a little bit better, but I'm excited for our guest today. Who's joining us, Sarah?
Yeah, I'm excited too. Again, this is one with the very few times we have a stranger on with us. So I'm super excited to meet you, Ed, because we haven't met yet. And we're going to talk about Rewire Fitness amongst other things. And the reason why I think it was very interesting to see your offering and what you're doing is, for a start, we're always talking here about self-measurement and how do you do that. And the second thing was your focus on kind of the mental side of performance and fitness, because we do on the show talk a lot about what you can do and how you can do it. And later on, we're going to be talking about, certain segments like how do women specifically exercise, but we haven't really so much talked about mindset. So I'm hoping that's something we can delve into a little bit with you. And we're just super excited to have you on. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me, and it's great to meet you both as well. I'm really excited to be here today and to be talking with you. I think it's going to be a great chat.
Yeah, Ed, we like to start our podcasts kind of going into some of the basics of what you do and really understanding, what is your biohacking superpower, your bio superpower, but really learning the basics, because I know our audience is really interested in like getting started, not being an expert. And then Sarah's here really because she is an expert at pretty much everything. I've learned everything in my life in the last 3 years from Sarah, including how to speak more eloquently. Yes. But yeah. Sarah's the expert here. So if we can, we like to kind of advance the podcast and talk a little bit more about some of the interesting things you're seeing, some of the great innovations that are happening within your space too. That would be awesome. So what is your biohacking superpower? What is it here that you want to share?
Yeah, we have built something pretty awesome at Rewire. We've built a mental fitness app for athletes that helps them reach their full potential and avoid burnout. So we do that through providing solutions for improving readiness, recovery, and resilience. And it really puts the mental aspect at the forefront alongside the physical component. So often we always ask athletes, we always ask high-performing individuals, what % of your performance would you attribute to the mind? And everyone says somewhere between 50 and 90%. Then we ask this follow-up of, okay, what are you doing to train it? What are you doing to recover it? What are you doing to put any sort of focus on it? And it's always this sort of awkward silence and essentially a big fat zero. So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to bring the mental aspect into how we approach our training, recovery, and sort of monitoring as well. Based on over 10 years of science, really formed from a landmark study in 2009 by Samuel Marcora, really highlighting the effects of mental fatigue on performance and the detrimental effects that it has, and through some of the processes of sort of perception of effort primarily. And we've built a system around training that. So, we're really excited with what we've built, and our users are as well. They're finding a lot of benefit from really focusing on the mental side of fitness.
But what about you, Ed? So how did you kind of get started with this? Have you got a sports background, or is it something you struggled with yourself?
I do, yeah. So to give a little background about myself at the moment, I'm Ed, one of the co-founders and product lead of Rewire. I grew up as a rugby player near you, Sarah, in London, and just love sports, love competing, and I would say I started at a pretty low level and worked my way up as high as I can get, but just love that sort of grind, love that sort of process of improving yourself. I then developed a real passion for performance optimization and sports science. So that happened when I was about 13 and diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, and began this journey of like performance optimization. So it starts with blood sugars. How can I get my blood sugars in the right state for performance? And when you're literally controlling a bodily process that's been taken away from you, you get super attuned to your physiology and how your body works. So that sort of sparked my journey to learning all about the body and the mind and how that relates back to performance. Then we went through a journey of like optimizing training, recovery, nutrition, and then mindset, which really brings us here. And then I was lucky enough to be able to get the chance to study that at Loughborough University. So around the time I was studying my degree in sport and exercise science, I met Sun, one of our co-founders, and Cody, and we got building on this product, which we think is really having a huge beneficial effect on athletes, and is really bringing the science into a user experience that people can benefit from. So we're really excited about that.
It's interesting you say you came, like you were your first kind of trigger was diabetes, because that's, obviously that's a biological condition, and it's actually, we spoke about it last week. We had a blood sugar expert on last week, Danny. She was brilliant. She was kind of coaching us through that. But how does that really link in with sort of mindset stuff, or are you thinking more about how do you kind of find solutions to those problems?
Yeah, firstly, we're extremely solution orientated. Like whenever we take a monitoring data point, there's always a solution that comes with that, because we can say you're in a bad state today, but just telling you that has no beneficial effect. The real benefit comes from providing a solution around that. So that's what we're aiming to do. The kickstart of diabetes, at first it just began my love for the whole field of sports science, because I was able to really like unlock performance through just dialing into the science, dialing into the physiology. And also I think there is a huge connection. I felt it a lot between the mental side of how I was feeling and my blood sugar levels. So, we're looking at before a game and the adrenaline's pumping. That would really significantly affect my blood sugar levels. And finding a way to control that and manage that was huge in overall management of diabetes. And also then just my mental performance as well in the game.
It's a good follow-on, actually, from the podcast we had last week, because we were talking about how to control blood sugar. I mean, we were talking about actually using the continuous blood sugar monitors. I don't know what you think about those for people who don't have diabetes, who are just looking to get that information and learn.
This is I can touch on that briefly, because I'm super passionate about those devices, because when I was diagnosed, they weren't a thing. You couldn't get them, and what you were relying on was time gaps between your taking your blood sugar levels. So not only is it easier, but you get that whole continuous 24 cycle, and that allows you to see a real picture in between. Like people used to, and this is me as well, you used to go high overnight, and you'd get a picture before you went to sleep. You'd be maybe a certain level, and then you'd be much higher when you woke up. And the only data you have is those two data points, so you can only imagine it's going up. And yet the solution for that is taking more insulin, or as it would seem. But once you get that continuous monitoring, you understand that the problem's actually going low, and then that triggering a response in your body which sends you flying high. So it's kind of this, when you start to get that continuous data, it's really lets you dial in and see things on a different level. And that's one of the things, that technology has helped me so much, and that's one of the reasons I love creating technology like this for people, because technology has a huge effect on our health and well-being and performance, and it's just I feel very grateful that I'm able to sort of build technology that hopefully helps others do the same, and we're seeing that.
Yeah, it's really fascinating to connect those two things together. I Sarah knows this, and I've talked about it several times. I have a daughter who plays college sports, and she's a basketball player, and we talk a lot about mental, her mental awareness and burnout, and I mean, there's just so much there, and a lot of these athletes who've come out recently, like Naomi Osaka, and even like Michael Phelps, and you watch some of these meltdowns like from Ben Simmons, and pray to God Jason Tatum doesn't continue to melt down and can step it up tonight and win for the Celtics. But it's like I got to imagine that I never watch my daughter's diet, right? It's one of those things that she's in charge of it, and I don't think she's like carb overloading or doing anything. Is it really something? I obviously it's something you want to look at long term, but are there short term things that are recommended here with this app to kind of help kind of game day versus like maintenance?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's dive into that, because our system really supports both long-term and on-the-spot recovery, which I think is a huge part of it. And just whilst you mentioned it, I got my fingers crossed with you as well. NBA is just a crazy example because they're literally back to back. Like the whole, how do you reset? How do you regain your sort of mental and physical recovery in that short period of time? And ultimately, we think we can add a lot of benefit there. One of our investors and users turned investor is Kyle Korver, and he sort of lives and breathes this stuff. But we think we can add a lot of benefit there. And then diving into our system, so we've got our readiness assessment at its core. That's sort of your tool for monitoring your mental, physical, and emotional state. So we do that for a 90-second of fatigue assessment in the morning that really gets a nice picture of where you're at. And what that involves is a short reaction time task designed to understand your level of cognitive fatigue, an emotional survey which is normalized to the individual. So we're looking at stress, readiness, rest, and frustration. And then a range of physical data points using your resting physiology, so heart rate variability, resting heart rate, some sleep data, and then some loads like training load and muscle soreness, and we even take into account mental load too. So, a range of different measures that come in, and it just takes 90 seconds of a user's time and gives them a great picture of where they're at that day. Then we're going to provide solutions to support the whole 24 hours of that athlete. So, straight away, we give them a personalized recovery session, and that's based on their goal for today. We say, what do you want to achieve? Is it rest and recovery? Is it physical performance or athletic performance, or is it productivity? We're thinking about the time-crunched athlete, the athlete that's trying to balance work and training and just performing on all fronts. I think athletes is a broad term, and we want to support all levels of athletes. So then we're going to give them a really tailored 2 to 4 minute recovery session designed to get them in a state to achieve that. So we have the context of where they are. We know whether they're under a lot of stress. We know whether they're under a lot of cognitive fatigue or physical fatigue. And we know what they want to achieve. And we can create a session featuring the right guided breathing protocols, featuring the right frequency of binaural beats, featuring the right self-talk messaging, featuring the right visualization cues, featuring subliminal priming, where we sort of flash positive imagery to have a really beneficial effect on mood and motivation. And in just 2 to 4 minutes, we can create people go through a dramatic change in state that really prepares them for the day. So our users are able to drop their stress by 70%. They're able to improve their readiness by 30%. They're 30% more focused. These are some of the stats we're getting, and it's really exciting to see that in just a short period of time. And then throughout the day, throughout the whole 24 hours of the athlete's day, we're going to provide solutions that's going to support them. So if they've got, a big meeting, we're going to come, we've got sessions to help them prepare for that. If they need to unwind after work and prepare for their workout, we've got sessions designed for that. If they need a post-workout recovery session, we'll literally pull their data from Strava and create a session around their state that's designed to help with post-workout mental recovery and prepare them for physical recovery too. And we've got sessions designed for sleep and preparing you for sleep. So really throughout the whole athlete's day. And then Russ, to your point as well, those are sort of on the spot tools. And we also developed a neurotraining system, which is based on the research. A paper by Stiano in 2015 really highlights the beneficial effects of this, where they used brain endurance training on participants who did a time to exhaustion test, which is a brutal test. And those that did the brain endurance training were able to get triple the improvement in performance over a 12-week period compared to the control group. So really exciting data. So yeah, both the long-term and the on-the-spot recovery tools too.
But what do you think about, I mean, because I don't think Russ and I would consider ourselves athletes by any stretch.
No.
So I was just wondering, you do you, Russ? He's nodding.
I was, and then life smacked me in the face. I mean, I played football.
Well, I'm not trying to disparage you or say that you're not an athlete, Russ. Maybe you are out there running track every day.
No.
Are you?
No, not at all. Not at all. No. And but to your point, yeah, go ahead, Sarah, because I
was just going to say, because I have been given your app to try. I've been given your app, and I must admit I only downloaded it today because I was like, oh, I'm meeting the guys today, so I must see what it's all about. My first question is, can I link my Aura? Because that didn't seem to happen automatically, because that's where Russ and I are kind of unpaid Aura affiliates at this point, because we're using. And then my second, it was quite interesting because even though I'm by no stretch an athlete, just sitting down, I did the test, and it was quite interesting to see my reaction times. And obviously it would be cool to test that against other hacks that I'm doing. And then the other thing, doing the minutes meditation, just that taking a minute and doing the diaphragm breathing, the visualizations. To me, I can certainly see where I would use it in a non-athletic way. I mean, I do hot yoga, it doesn't really count as being an athlete, but it's still good information.
Yeah. No, it's firstly, yes, you can connect to Aura. We've done a range of integrations: Aura, Apple Health, Google Fit, Bluetooth heart rate monitors, Strava, and we're doing more and more. So yes, you can connect to Aura, and that's just done. I'll show you after how you do that, but
yeah, okay.
in your settings and under integrations. And yeah, absolutely. I mean, like, my definition of an athlete is someone that sweats, and that puts it a huge market. So I mean, this is designed from for someone that just wants to, someone that does hot yoga right up to your elite athlete. So there's a huge spectrum of athletes, and really there's sort of different challenges that each one faces, but ultimately it becomes down to performance. And for me, that's a balance of, by no stretch am I an elite athlete by any stretch, but I love to train. I love to get my body working. And yeah, we're building a startup here, and it's highly pressured and highly stressful, and managing those stresses from different fronts. I think there's a huge amount of benefit we add to the time crunched athlete, which I would put myself in the category of. But I think that's someone that's trying to balance work stress, family stress, training, like all these different parts of our lives, all these different performance elements that come in. And even for the executive alone that doesn't that might maybe someone that doesn't do any physical training at all, there's a huge amount of benefit it still adds on the sort of performance front, because understanding the cognitive fatigue you're under, understanding the stress you're under, they all form into how effectively you're going to perform in that day and the sort of decisions you're going to make. So the more solutions we can provide around improving your performance on all fronts, that's really where the value comes in. So I have a very broad definition of an athlete, but I think it's it's a lot of us fall into that category without knowing, and maybe it's something it seems like this high up term, but really, like, I think we can all associate with some level of performance.
It's cool.
Yeah. I was gonna add to that. I have the app, and I'm just, it's playing in the background here. Your my guided breathing session is going. But I appreciate the connection between mind and body. I think it's incredibly important. One of the things my daughter and I have talked about is really her focus. And one of the things when she got to college, the biggest difference in training was connecting the mind and the body, not just body, right? Like a high school player, it's all body. You're just sort of reacting and going. But when you get to this place where there's such a marginal difference between you and the next person, or you and the next person that you're guarding, it really is a mental thing, right? Like, you have the physical capabilities, but it's now a mental game. I'm curious, when you think about some of the tips you take away, like what are some of those very kind of quick and easy early tips that you'd give someone that's just really getting into this, of like how to connect those two things together? And like, where do you start when you do this, Ed? Like, what are some of the things you would suggest for starters?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think one of the best things is just having an understanding of the importance, and sort of where you're at each stage, checking in with yourself. That's one of the main reasons we built the readiness assessment, to give people that tool to start to get attuned to their body and their mind and their emotions, and start to get into a state where they can really understand where they're at and make solutions off the back of that. The other thing I really like, in terms of starting to understand that mind-body connection, and it can be sort of, it's a really interesting one, but like when you start to look at the process of guided breathing and how that's affecting, like, it's one of those few ways we can actually control, parts of our body. Like, we can literally sit there and change our heart rate through guided breathing. We can change our stress levels. We can change, how motivated or prepared we are for performance. And it's when you realize that that's one process that you really have control over. Like, if I was to say to you, like, increase your heart rate, and you're just sitting there, like, just trying to increase your heart rate, how do you even do that? uh, it can't, like, you can't like, you can't just go, right, heart, let's get a bit faster here. You've got to work through that process. And the breath work is sort of one way we have that connection over our body. So I find that fascinating, and I think that's a great place to start. With that in mind, one that I love is box breathing. So inhaling for 5 through your nose, holding for 5, exhaling for 5 through your mouth, and then holding for 5. And that's, you can start with 4 seconds as well, but the key is really just the equal nature of each hold and inhale and exhale. It's a great tool.
I'm interested what people think about that. I mean, Russ, what do you think about your daughter? Would she associate like doing this? Because some of the things to me seem a little bit out there, like the binaural beats. I mean, I'm totally into it because I'm doing all the biohacking stuff, but I can imagine like a young athlete like Russ's daughter is like, we want you to sit and listen to this. Would she be into that? And Ed, do you get kickback on that? Like, why would I do it?
I would say, though, I think that it goes back to this, like, when you're in high school, there's a clear difference between good and great, right? When you get to the next level, there's very little difference between great and great, right? And so I think anything that gives you an edge, and I watch NBA players, NFL players, like anything to give them an edge. And I think that and what you're saying here, it sounds like, is that the mental, like, there are mental tricks. I mean, you watch baseball players take a deep breath before they pitch, or they just give up a big hit. You watch them take a deep breath before a free throw, the basketball player. So like, it's the breathing. If you can learn how to breathe effectively, you can actually calm yourself down and bring yourself down, it sounds like, right? My daughter would definitely do it. I would do it. I'd do it in a meeting where I'm like, I cannot believe that person just said that. Let me go breathe a little bit.
Would you listen to the binaural beats? Would you just take 5 minutes and do the binaural beats? Well, that's cool.
Absolutely.
It's cool.
Yeah.
And Ed, what do you think? What response do you get from people who are doing it? I mean, do you get people who actually make that connection?
Yeah, it's so we're trying to put a big focus on education, because you guys know what binaural beats are, but it's a new protocol. Same with subliminal priming, it's a new protocol. It really comes down back to what people are concerned about. And Russ, sounds like for your daughter, that's along with a lot of athletes, that's performing. They want to perform well. They want to advance to the next level. So really, when you break it down into that terms, it can be a huge, and people start to understand that it's really going to have an effect on this and that. It can get really, people are down for it. And it's, we have people, like, as soon as they try one out and feel the benefits of it, they can really start to understand that. So it's existed for a while. We're trying to put it in a way that users and consumers can really understand and use easily, because before this, these protocols weren't overly accessible, at least together. And that's what we're trying to bring together.
Yeah, it was a little bit esoteric, a little bit woo-woo, the whole that kind of concept previously. So it's very cool that it's kind of being integrated into this kind of tech where it's put into context where people get it.
Right.
And
Yeah.
presumably you see an effect. That's why you've got it in there, presumably, because that's what, like I say, when I did it today, that's the two things that came up, the breathing and the binaural beats. And I thought, wow, that's something that I haven't seen outside of certain, like in the old days, you used to get it on a CD and you'd put it in and you'd sit there and listen
Exactly.
to it and people would
Yeah.
think you were loopy.
Yeah, these tools haven't been around for these tools have been around for ages, at least the binaural
Yeah.
beats, but
Yeah.
to the point where we're on CDs, but like having it in an app form where
Yeah.
people can easily access it and combining it with the other protocols, we think adds a huge amount of value. And Russ, like thinking about your daughter, like one thing with high school students and college students, it's just the burnout rate is just huge right now.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's across all the board of athletes, not just high school athletes, not just college athletes. Like burnout is such a huge thing, and when we start to break down the process of how that's happening, we start to realize that a lot of that is controllable on the mental side of things. So we think we can have a huge effect on burnout. People taking a more manageable approach to training, or focus on their mind, focus on how they're preparing mentally and physically, how they're recovering mentally and physically. So we're really excited about adding some value there.
Yeah, I was reading a little bit, in preparation, about some of the comparisons and tactics that you're pulling from the Navy SEALs, and sort of like some of the more advanced pieces here. So as we're downloading the app, everyone's using it. People are learning how to breathe, binaural beats. But like, let's go into some of the more advanced things. I like to understand a little bit more about the other topic you mentioned, Sarah. The subliminal piece, because I don't know. I mean, how does that work? And it seems fairly advanced, and I'm sure Navy SEALs have been doing it for decades.
Yeah, I haven't seen anything from Navy SEALs on subliminal priming. I know the box breathing is a huge technique for them to sort of stay calm under pressure, but subliminal priming is a super interesting process. It's fairly novel. It's kind of straight out of a lab, and we've literally pulled, our tools from the research. So we're super excited to bring it to a consumer level. Essentially, it's kind of built on this philosophy, and I'll dive into the science too. That we're social animals, and we respond well to positive imagery. Just if I was sitting here the whole time and flat face, not responding emotionally at all, I think this would be a much more difficult interview than if I'm there smiling and engaging and giving you my full attention and smile. So we know inherently that how powerful a smile can be. It has a huge effect on our mood, our motivation, and our perception of effort, which is such a crucial mechanism. So what we're doing is we're flashing positive imagery subliminally at a really fast, quick rate. And what that does is it really improves our mood, motivation, and, as I say, perception of effort. And the perception of effort is such a crucial piece here, because when they look at why mental fatigue impacts performance, it's not for a process of, it's not for our physiology, it's not for our musculoskeletal system, it's for our perception of effort. And one way I like to look at this, I did this a lot in the lab, in sports science labs, but people might have experienced this at the gym if they've got a personal trainer or something like that. And if you're on a treadmill and you're asked to go at what you think is max effort, and they say, okay, what level are you at? What RPE are you at? And there's two scales. There's a 10-point scale and also a 6 to 20 scale. But let's just look at the 10 scale. If you respond back and say you're at 10, you can't go any harder. But the second someone implements some tools to reduce your perception of effort, be that self-talk, be that visualization, be that subliminal priming, be that some external, in the labs, we would get people on the side of a Wingate test, which is brutal. And to do it, you have to have people screaming, cheering you on from the outside. And the second you do that, you're able to go harder. But hold on, you were just at a 10. You couldn't go any harder. So what's happened there is you've reduced your perception of effort, and that's then allowed you to push harder. So you're still at a 10 because you've sort of gone through that process of reducing your perception of effort and then allowing you to push yourself harder physically. So a lot of the tools we use are working through this process of perception of effort and reducing that. And that's a crucial
That's
part.
fascinating. I was going to quote Nigel Tufnell from Spinal Tap and just say you're taking everyone to 11 at this point.
Yeah,
Which,
yeah, exactly.
But that is so fascinating.
11.
Of like, it's like your max is no longer your max. You're like, I maxed out at 225. Well, actually, you know, so it's really a fascinating thing. The subliminal priming.
It's a hack. It's a true hack.
It's a true hack.
Perception hack, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, carry on, Russ. Sorry.
Well, the subliminal priming piece is really interesting. I mean, I've seen many of psychology and many TV shows and that actually do it. I'm wondering about those athletes that are that thrive on, you know, the negative energy, right? Or those that thrive on negative energy. Can you actually rewire someone's brain? You know, like someone who likes to go into, like, you know, a visiting crowd and loves to hear them, you know, yell how much they hate them and gets energy off of that. I imagine, you know, what happens to that?
Do you know any of these people, Russ?
Well, his name's Draymond Green. He plays for the Warriors. You know, there are many, but there are players that thrive on the hate, right? That thrive on sort of that negative energy. I mean, and there are many people that live their lives getting negative energy. So can you really rewire someone's brain to, you know, start to look at smiles and be like, oh, that's giving me, you know, I feel better because of that? Am I being way too literal?
I think I think it's a really interesting one, because as we think about resilience, you know, these are kind of things that get in the way. Like, I would sort of question whether it's a direct mechanism whereby he's, you know, responding to those boos and whatever, and that's having an effect on his performance, or what he's able to take those and transfer that into that's having an effect. So, you know, when we look at resilience, it's a huge piece of that is sort of overcoming challenges and having a great ability to overcome those. So, you know, you might go out on you might have prepared for a marathon and it turns into a super hot day and you're struggling like crazy because you haven't, like, this is a challenge you didn't sort of anticipate, but having sort of some of the tools to be able to reset and refocus and just have a level of resilience to train that, and that's kind of what and push through that. That's kind of some of the pieces we're trying to push with the neuro training system, developing our ability to be resilient and strong in the face of challenges and adversity.
Yeah, it's having a strategy. Maybe that guy's strategy is, you know, this is the worst it can, you know, bring on the worst it can be, and then that's it. He's dealt with it, hasn't he? He can't be put off by any of the boos because he's already had it all.
And all of this is what you're telling yourself, right? Like, and we've learned a lot on our podcast about how we actually speak and talk to ourselves. But if I'm telling myself, like I think when you're right, like when you're a marathon runner and you're at mile 20 and you're just like, I'm not going to make it, I can't do it. Like, you're not going to make it and you can't do it, versus finding that next place to take you to that next level is super important. So, yeah, it's really incredible, and I find great value in these tools, not just like what you said, not just for athletes, but for like everyday life, is finding those connection points so you can read your body a little bit better and teach your body a little bit better too, you know, through your mind.
Yeah, and understanding how things have an impact on you. You know, if you've got up and you've sat all day in front of the negative news and then you're expecting yourself to go and be the most functional at work,
right,
that might not be the best, you know, it might not be the best way to mentally prepare yourself for the day. I think the good thing about these tools is it gives you that awareness. Okay, if just seeing a positive image just flashed up for a second is going to have this effect on me, you know, it's probably best to prepare myself for the day in a more productive way.
Yeah. And you're right, Sarah. Like, it does prove a point. Like, maybe watching negative news is the exact thing it's doing, is giving you the negativity, versus, is there anyone doing positive news? Like, I want to watch, let's watch a bunch of subliminal priming TV shows. Let be our next venture, Ed. Yeah.
At least with the app, it flashes up affirmations and things, which is also cool. Yeah. Because again, it's kind of taking it. I mean, God, you know, remember when you used to go to work and they had those like awful pictures of a cat, you know, hang in there or whatever it was. But at least you're kind of seeing this kind of reinforcement. I think it's just a modern day way of those inspirational posters. Do you know what I mean? Because it's What I can't remember what the one that flashed up for me today. It was something like never ever give up. And I was sitting there thinking about, you know, some challenge at work, and I thought, yes, I'm not going to give up on this one and just get on with it. So I think there's huge value in just these small things that maybe you kind of write off. But actually the effect on your mental capacity could be huge, and it could be the difference between.
And Sarah, you're totally right. And I definitely on my Instagram have stopped following influencers and started to follow more of the Ram Dass's and more of the like influential, you know, that like one positive thing I can get in the morning, it really helps me, versus like seeing another influencer, you know, in a, you know, traveling somewhere where they're probably not, they're probably green screening it. But it does help. It does help.
Yeah, so probably the best thing is to ditch it all together and sit with something like this Rewire app, do your box breathing, look at the inspirational message, listen to the binaural beats, and set yourself up for the day, regardless of what you're doing. And if you're an athlete, well, then there's all these other tools. But yeah, there's huge value. And thank you so much for coming on and telling this, Ed, because it's just a reminder about how powerful our minds are, really, isn't it? I mean, that's the take home from all of this.
Yeah, absolutely.
And where can we find everything? Where can we find your app and it's in all the great ways to find it?
Yeah, sure. So on the App Store or Google Play, just look up Rewire Fitness. We just launched our new freemium app as well, so you can sign up completely for free, and then get access to some of our core features. And yeah, if you want to check us out on Instagram, that's at Rewire Fitness. If you want to read our website, which has a ton more information, just look up rewirefitness.app on the internet.
Beautiful.
Great.
Thank you so much. This has been super helpful. I immediately sent a quick text to my daughter and said, download it now. So which means she won't download it. So thank you.
You should have said don't download it.
Yeah,
don't
download
it.
this
Yeah,
app. Yeah. Whatever you do.
No, please do download it.
Yeah, please do download it. She will definitely download it, and we'll get you some feedback. But no, it's super helpful. Really appreciate it. It's awesome stuff.
Awesome. No, thanks so much for having me. I've really enjoyed this conversation, and great to meet you both as well.
Thank you, Ed. Take care.
Thank you.
Breaking the gray.